On my blog, I promised I would talk about how to make, or how I make, not how you should. I'm just going to show you how I do it. Make a jewelweed salve, or basically a kind of a poultice, more or less, to put on rashes, sunburns, poison ivy rashes, insect bites, anything that you would normally put a cortisone on. And first I'll explain jewelweed. This is a patch of jewelweed here. In fact, here's a lot more flowers over here. Jewelweed gets its name because you can kind of see on this leaf here, the dew is still on right now, but as the sun comes out and the dew starts beating up, the leaves don't actually absorb or seem to absorb water. The water seems to roll right off of it. And when the sun hits that, it kind of sparkles like jewels, and that's how it got its name. It also it has another name called touch-me-not, and that's because as the flowers die back, they leave a seed pod, and the seed pod, when it becomes very ripe, if you touch it, it pops, and this is how it sends out its seeds so that they can spread. And you can see the jewelweed actually goes quite a ways back into the woods. They do tend to like a little bit of sunshine, though they do, I see them growing not as big as stands, but in halfway decent stands in shaded areas too. Their main thing is they like to have their feet wet. And if you listen, the creek is right over on the other side of these bushes here. So it's, you know, it's right next to the water and it has its feet wet. Jewelweed's pretty easy to tell. They have, first of all, as it said, the water seems to bead up on them, so that's always, and you can kind of see the jewel effect there. So that's kind of one way of telling it. But it does have this beautiful flower, very much loved by hummingbirds. You'll see hummingbirds hovering in the jewelweed patch. And it has alternate leaves, where you can kind of see one leaf comes off here, and then you go up a little bit more on the stalk, another comes off here, instead of directly across from each other. It has slightly toothed, it's not really toothed, but slightly toothed leaves that have, while not extremely prominent, they're still prominent enough veins that you can see them. They don't just disappear into the leaf. If you live in a higher elevation, more than likely your jewelweed flowers will be yellow. It seems to be the way of it. The higher the elevation, the more yellow the flowers are. We're very close to sea level here at Wisconsin, so we have the orange flowers. Now, another thing about jewelweed is that, and I'm going to harvest a little bit of, but the stems and leaves, everything are very juicy and very easy to just crush in your hand. You can kind of just hear it as I'm doing it here. Very easy to crush in your hand. In fact, so that they give off their juices very easy. And when this in itself, just if you're walking down the trail and a bug bites you, you can grab this, mush it up in your hands, and then rub it on the bug bite, and it should take the itch down. So, I mean, just that in itself is great for doing that. This is, as it's often referred to, this is nature's cortisone, and it helps take the itch down. Now, I've heard a lot of people say, oh, it cures poison ivy. This does help take the itch down, take the swelling down of the poison ivy. It makes it less ugly and less uncomfortable. Your body is still going to have to run its course with the allergy. That's just all it is to it. But this does make it bearable. So anyway, I'm going to harvest a bunch of this, take it home, and show you how I do it. But this is jewelweed, and we are going to gather some of it and take it home and show you how I process it. Now, I suppose I should tell you what part to harvest as long as I'm here. You can see the plant here is probably about 2 feet tall this time of the year. If it's younger, you can probably use the whole plant, but because this plant is starting to get tough, there's a bottom part of its stem that's a little tough, so you just reach in and kind of see where the still fleshy part of the stem is, which usually is somewhere above one of the last sides of the leaves. This one, actually, I did get a few fibers in it, but that's okay. We can filter those out. So basically, the whole thing, flowers, leaves, stem, the whole thing is what you're going to harvest. If it's a young plant, you can harvest the whole plant except for the root. So anyway, that's what you're harvesting. Okay, so basically, these are the 4 ingredients that I'm going to use. Now, herbs are the people's medicine, which means you do not have to do exactly what I say. If you don't have one of these ingredients, that's fine. Really, to make a wash with Jewelweed, all you need is Jewelweed and enough water to blend it. Really, you don't even need the water. If you want, you can crush it up and put it on right away and make it as a poultice. But I'm going to make a little bit more, something that's going to last a little bit longer, number one, and number two, it's going to have a little bit more of a oomph to kind of help with things like poison ivy rash or insect bites, any kind of rash that you need. But if you don't have something that I'm listing here, don't worry about it. Like I said, you can just simply put the Jewelweed through a blender with enough water and keep that in the fridge, or put it into ice cubes, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. But basically what we're going to do is we're going to put these 4 ingredients. This is Jewelweed, nature's cortisone, like we talked about. Then we have some aloe leaves here. Aloe is really soothing to the skin, helps aid in healing, especially things like sunburns, things like that. It'll feel good on. But any kind of rash, it's going to help soothe the skin, which is really what you know, we want that soothing feeling. This is witch hazel. Witch hazel, it's a witch hazel tincture, and this and these are pretty much for the same thing. Witch hazel helps kind of tighten up the skin, helps keep things from oozing as much. Like if you have a poison ivy rash, it'll help it keep it from oozing. Or if you've got a really bad mosquito bite, sometimes if you scratch it and scratch it open, it'll ooze a little bit because your body's trying to fight the toxins that the mosquito put in there to keep your blood from coagulating. So this just helps with that, to kind of dry up that oozing, and it's still gentle enough. It's not like putting direct alcohol on it. It's a little more gentle, and it helps dry up things like an oozing poison ivy rash. Then we have our cucumber. Cucumbers help take down an edema, which is a swelling, like poison ivy rash swells. A lot of times you'll have I had one on the inside of my elbow once, and it swelled so much I couldn't bend my elbow. So the cucumber helps take down swelling. Most women know that if you have like puffy eyes, you take and you slice up a cucumber and stick them over your eyes and sit back and relax for a little bit. It's because it helps remove the edema, the extra water from your eyes, from the puffiness of your eyes. It does the same thing with a rash. And this one is not a perfect one out of the garden. A lot of times we'll hear people talk about, oh, you've got to have the perfect cucumber. No, this one here is one that's kind of, I missed it, so it's kind of gone past prime. So we're going to use that. We may take the seeds out of it, but we're going to chop that up and stick that in there. And then we'll go from there. But anyway, I'm going to stick all of this stuff into the blender, get it going, and we'll come right back. I forgot to mention that I did peel the cucumber after I showed it to you and showed you it was a cucumber. I did peel it, and the main reason for that is I don't want the excess fiber in there. We're going to strain that fiber out anyway, but we'll take a little bit out here in the first place, and then we'll just take the rest of it out. So here it is, all chopped up and turned into basically a kind of a green smoothie. We're going to strain this through because there were seeds in that cucumber, and there's the plants. I did try to get the non-fibrous tops, but there's probably a few fibers in here, and I just want to get that out. And so I'm going to strain it through here, and then we'll bottle it. And since I only have one hand, I'm going to put you guys down while I strain this. Now, one moment. I know many people who make something similar to this and will not strain it, and that's fine. Actually, in some ways, it might actually be better, because the stuff that isn't being strained through is medicine just as much as the stuff that's coming down below is. But here's the thing. I am a healer. People do come to me and ask to be healed, you know, ask for something. Oh, I've got poison ivy. Do you have something for it? And some people are very sensitive to rubbing something onto their skin or dabbing something onto their skin, and then suddenly having kind of a rough piece in there. It might hurt them, and they don't like to do that. And then there's other people who are used to store-bought things where everything is cookie cutter and nice and even, and those people do not do well with a little piece of fiber from a plant or a seed from the cucumber. You know, they just don't like it. So that's kind of what I do, but as you can see, this paste here, we're getting more and more of the liquid out of it, and this paste here is still very healing. You could use this paste as well as the stuff down below as a healing. And for some of us, wasting it doesn't make sense to us because plants gave of themselves to make this healing medicine. But so I a lot of times will put this paste in a separate way and use that myself in a separate place, and then this is what I use for people who perhaps are a little more sensitive. If it's just that you're just making it for yourself and you don't mind every now and then coming across the seed, you're used to working with plants, so you have no problem with that, by all means, you skip this step. Just pour it straight into your container. But I'm going to finish doing this, so I'll be back in a bit. So then here is our green medicine. Again, good for things. The main thing that it's used for is poison ivy. It's good for bug bites if you got a sunburn, especially one that gets the edema to it, gets a swelling to it. Any kind of thing that is going to get a swelling to it or has that itching, anything like that, just basically think whatever you reach for the cortisone for, and that's what this can go. Now it has to be stored in a cold place, so I'm going to put mine in the refrigerator. This is not something you can and keep on the shelves. The other thing you can do with this is pour it into, and this is for long term, I've already made my long term stuff, but you pour it into ice cube trays, freeze it, take it out, and then just put them into like a Ziploc baggie and just keep those, and that usually lasts a year. This will probably last 3 weeks to a month depending on how cold your refrigerator is, and in the liquid form, frozen form, it lasts a year. But as I've often said, last year we didn't have any jewelweed. It was a drought year. And so we hoarded our ice cubes, our jewelweed ice cubes, and they lasted for much longer than a year, probably 18, 19 months, maybe even longer than that, and they were still effective. So the rule of thumb is a year on the medicine, but if you have them for a little bit longer than that, they probably will still work. But anyway, that is a nice jewelweed, cucumber, witch hazel, and aloe. Makes your skin feel really good if you're dealing with a rash of some sort. So there you go.